The power of silence, embracing Stoicism in a noisy world. At times, the most impactful statement you can make is to remain completely silent. No spoken words, no responses, just the passage of time. And my friends, this silence is gradually tormenting them. Picture this scenario: everyone, you have transformed from a person into a tempest that vanished without any forewarning. You didn't leave a trail of destruction in your wake, instead, you simply faded away into the vastness of the sky. It was quiet, it was cold, and it was undeniably powerful. Now, they find themselves standing there, holding an umbrella, anticipating the rain that never arrives. This is the essence of silence for them. It is not tranquility or a sense of space, rather, it is a mix of confusion and restlessness, a storm that didn't obliterate them but left everything drenched in uncertainty. They were expecting noise, a dramatic farewell, perhaps a final message pleading for understanding, but what they received was nothing at all. This absence of communication was not a sign of weakness, it was a declaration that you were finished. You felt no need to validate your existence or to plead for clarity. You simply opted for silence. In making that choice, you prioritized your own well-being. They believed that your silence would eventually dissipate. They thought you would come rushing back to provide explanations for your departure. What they never anticipated was this: time isn't mending their wounds, it's actually revealing them. With each passing day that you remain silent, with every moment you don't reach out or return, the weight of that silence grows heavier on their heart. At first, it might have just felt like a quiet pause, but now that quiet has turned into something almost ghostly, something that lingers and unsettles. Outwardly, they might carry on as if nothing has shifted, going through their daily routines as usual. But deep down, everything is different. There's a constant voice in their mind that refuses to quiet down, and a persistent ache in their stomach that just won't go away. The person they once believed they had complete influence over, someone they thought would always be there, has vanished. There's no explanation, no farewell, not even a brief message. Just a stark absence that resonates more powerfully than any heated argument ever could. When you choose to leave without saying a word, you're not simply stepping out of their life, you're also taking away their sense of control. And when that control is lost, it's often replaced by a rising sense of anxiety and panic. This is the true impact of silent departures. Sometimes, the lack of closure is the loudest message of all. Initially, individuals may convince themselves that everything is all right, that they desired this situation, and that you are easily replaceable. However, as time passes, these self-deceptions begin to unravel, leading to a profound sense of regret. This realization does not occur all at once, rather, it unfolds gradually, piece by piece. Your disappearance was not a cry for attention, it was a necessary step because your inner peace took precedence over their confusion. You were not obligated to provide them with closure, instead, you owed it to yourself to embark on a new beginning. In that quiet space, while they may be caught in a downward spiral, you are rising. You are transforming into someone they were never prepared to encounter, a person who no longer feels the need to justify himself to those who failed to appreciate his worth. They may scroll through their feeds, post updates, and anxiously await a response from you. Yet, your silence speaks volumes, resonating louder than any words could. This silence is what drives them to distraction, as nothing disturbs a person's mind quite like an enigma they cannot decipher. You, my friend, became that enigma the moment you decided to step away from the game. If this message resonates with you, if you have experienced the empowering nature of silence and how it reveals truths that noise often obscures, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Silence ultimately prevails. Let the world be aware of what you deeply feel within. And remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more impactful insights like this. This isn't the conclusion of your journey, it's the beginning of your ascent. Stick with me. One important thing to understand is that silence can be incredibly powerful. You don't need to make a loud, dramatic exit to leave a lasting impact. Sometimes, the quietest departure can create the loudest reverberations. They thought they could handle your silence, your disappearance, and your refusal to engage in their games. They expected you to react, to seek closure, or at least to leave behind some final words. But you didn't. You chose to leave in complete silence. And now, that silence is haunting them more than any heated argument ever could. Initially, they called it peace, a break, a moment to catch their breath. They convinced themselves it was a relief. But that's because they didn't grasp the true meaning of your silence. They didn't realize that your silence wasn't just a temporary pause, it was a definitive end. Not just the end of a conversation, but the end of their illusion of control over you. You weren't being passive, you were being deliberate and calculated, a ghost with a purpose. Imagine a forest after a devastating wildfire. The flames may have been extinguished, but the lingering heat still resonates in the air. That's you. The silence is palpable, and it's not just the absence of noise that's striking, it's the weight of unspoken words, the echoes of what could have been said. The people around you thought they had time, thought you'd reach out or break under the pressure. But what they failed to grasp is that a person who chooses silence has already navigated their breaking point and decided to move forward. You didn't disappear due to weakness, you vanished because explaining yourself became a futile exercise. You knew that if those around you truly valued you, they would have never put you in a situation where silence became the only viable response. And now, the questions begin to swirl around them like a vortex. Why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you try to make your voice heard? The silence is not just a lack of noise, it's a powerful statement that demands attention and understanding. Have you ever pondered the weight of unanswered questions? They waited for fireworks, tears, pleas, frantic promises to fix things. Instead, a profound stillness emerged. And that emptiness? It's heavier than any argument. It lingers in the quiet moments when clocks tick too slowly, and dawn arrives before the darkness fades. It slips into pauses that used to feel peaceful. You became their obsession, not because of words shared, but those left unsaid. Now, maybe you sit questioning your choices. Part of you might still itch to explain, to push harder, to craft the perfect apology. Let me tell you something you need to hear. If they required clarity, they weren't truly listening the first time. If they needed more words, the ones you already chose never landed. Some people only shift their perspective when you stop shouting. It's brutal, I know. Quietness isn't simple. It demands courage, keeping silence when your soul screams for release. There's power in stillness, especially when others expect noise. Remaining calm despite the urge to justify or defend becomes its own form of strength. This isn't about evasion, it's about recognizing that certain truths resonate deepest when left unarticulated. The act of holding back isn't avoidance, it's a brave acknowledgement that some conversations demand space, not words. It requires a significant amount of bravery to walk away from a situation without making a dramatic exit. This act illustrates a key distinction between someone who is constantly seeking approval and someone who has finally discovered inner tranquility. When you choose to remain silent, it is not an act of retribution, rather, it is a conscious choice. This choice serves as a powerful affirmation of your self-worth, signaling that you are no longer willing to engage in the same exhausting patterns. They may have believed they could manage the situation, but they were mistaken. The reality is that they are not merely losing you, they are also losing a part of themselves that felt secure knowing you were just a message away. The truth is, you have no intention of returning this time. There will be no grand speeches, no heartfelt apologies, and no theatrical comebacks, just the passage of time. And this very silence is already beginning to take its toll on them. So, if you resonate with this feeling deep within, if you have chosen to step away without any fanfare or pleas, simply to safeguard your own peace of mind, I encourage you to express that in the comments right now. Remember, silence is a form of strength. Let them see it, let yourself acknowledge it, and let the world understand that your silence is not a sign of weakness, it is, in fact, a demonstration of power in its most authentic form. And this is merely the beginning of your journey. If you think the silence is unsettling for them now, just wait until we discuss what time will reveal next. Remain by my side. 2. The instant you depart, the clock begins to tick. It's only when a moment becomes a memory that its true worth is realized. The moment you fell silent, the countdown commenced. However, this isn't a countdown leading to reconciliation or closure, but rather a subtle, imperceptible ticking clock, audible only to them. Initially, it's insignificant, just another day without a message, another hour devoid of your voice. Yet, as time elapses, the atmosphere shifts, the silence grows sharper, and the seconds they once took for granted start to feel like blades scraping against their skin. You see, friends, when you walk away without a word, you bestow upon them something they never imagined they'd dread: time. And not just time itself, but time without you. This is the aspect they were unprepared for. They assumed distance would bring clarity, that your absence would make you pursue them, that the space would weaken you. What they failed to grasp is that time has always been your ally. Because time doesn't merely pass, it unveils. It unveils what comfort once felt like, what presence used to signify, what they lost, not in a single moment, but in the gradual erosion of days that no longer include you. Imagine a familiar room that's suddenly missing a vital element. At first, it's hard to pinpoint what's off. Maybe it's the atmosphere, the warmth, or something subtle. You brush it off, but over time, the room starts to feel colder, emptier. It's only when you take a closer look that you realize the thing that made it feel like home is gone. That's what your absence does. It begins with a small, almost imperceptible shift, but it grows, and before you know it, the entire world they built starts to feel unfamiliar, incomplete, and uncomfortable. They may have told themselves they needed space, and believed that walking away would bring peace. However, they forgot that peace isn't the absence of someone, but rather the presence of something deeper. And now that you're no longer there, time is slowly and mercilessly peeling back the layers. When someone has had consistent access to your energy, stability, and presence, and they lose it, time transforms from a friend into a tormentor. Every quiet morning, every long drive, and every night spent scrolling in silence takes on a different meaning when you're not just gone, but silent. It's here that many men start to doubt themselves, mistakenly believing that the silence is a sign of failure. But the truth is, the silence is a reflection of the void left by your absence, and it's a reminder that your presence was what made their world feel complete. People often tell themselves that time is erasing their memory, that they should say something, reconnect, or send a message. But isn't that exactly the trap? It's the fear of being forgotten, the sneaky lie that whispers, if you don't remind them how valuable you are, they'll forget you ever existed. Let me share a truth with you: you don't need to prove your worth to anyone if your impact is already etched into their lives. Your presence wasn't just background noise, it was a heartbeat. A rhythm they didn't even notice they depended on until it vanished. Now, as every second ticks by, the silence between them grows louder. Not because you're suffering, but because they are. You've moved forward, adapted, and are building something new. Meanwhile, they're stuck in the ruins of their own assumptions, trying to cope with a reality they never truly confronted. Every moment you stay quiet is another moment they're forced to sit with the uncomfortable truth they tried to ignore. Time is cruel, yes, but it's also fair. It gives everyone the same gift, a chance to reflect. Now, as they scramble to fill the void with distractions, mindless chatter, fleeting pleasures, anything to drown out the emptiness, it all falls flat. Why? Because time has a way of stripping away the noise, revealing what's hidden beneath. The longer they go without you, the clearer it becomes. Your absence isn't just a gap, it's a mirror showing them what they've lost, and what they might still need to learn. The timer hasn't begun for you, it's already ticking for them. If you've been holding steady, if you've been occupying that quiet, sacred space of patience where time works its subtle magic, then join me in saying this aloud. Type it into the comments right now: time reveals all. Let this message echo to them, to yourself, and to anyone observing from the sidelines. Make it clear that you're not fixated on the passing minutes, you're tracking the quiet progress of your growth. You're not looking back at what was. You're not waiting for permission to move forward. You're advancing with the one unwavering companion: time, which never distorts the truth. And this is just the beginning. Because when time moves silently, it doesn't merely transform people, it dismantles the illusions they cling to. Stay with me. 3. When the comfort of routine fades into memory, the most agonizing farewells are those left unsaid and unexplained. There was a time when your presence was a constant, a foundation they could always rely on. Your words, your actions, your energy, they became the invisible backdrop of their daily lives, something they never had to consciously notice. You were simply there, like air or light. But now? Now, everything that once felt familiar has dissolved into echoes, like shadows that no longer belong to the present. This shift isn't just about absence, it's about the haunting realization that what was once taken for granted is now irretrievably gone. It's not merely your physical departure that has had such a profound impact, but rather the departure of the very essence of who you are. This has left behind a chasm of absence so deep and specific that it feels utterly impossible for anyone or anything else to ever truly occupy that particular space. Those left behind awaken to a vacant side of the bed. They step into rooms that once felt vibrant and alive, filled with the warmth of your laughter and the comfort of your touch, only to now encounter a chilling emptiness where your presence used to be. Initially, the situation might not have seemed so difficult to bear. The quiet felt manageable, perhaps even a welcome change. They might have rationalized it, telling themselves they needed personal space, believing that time spent apart was a healthy and necessary step. However, here's a crucial point about silence: it's not truly empty. On the contrary, it's incredibly full. It becomes packed with the thoughts they desperately tried to push away and the emotions they were convinced they could successfully suppress. Now, it seems as though every single corner of their environment serves as a stark and constant reminder of what is missing. The comforting familiarity that your presence once provided has undergone a transformation, morphing into something unsettlingly unfamiliar and unrecognizable. To help illustrate this feeling, consider this relatable scenario. Picture yourself walking through a neighborhood you haven't visited in many years. The streets are exactly as you remember them. The buildings are still standing in their familiar spots. Yet, despite this visual consistency, the place somehow no longer feels like home. There's a distinct sense of detachment, a distance that has grown between you and the location that used to feel so comfortable and welcoming. It is, objectively, the same place, but subjectively, the feeling is entirely different. This is precisely what happens when you step away. Your absence doesn't simply create a vacant physical area, its effects run much deeper. It establishes a mental environment, a realm where everything that once felt routine and familiar transforms into a constant reminder of what has been lost. Despite their best efforts to push these thoughts away, memories continue to surge forth, overwhelming them. The most challenging aspect is that they find themselves at a loss for how to cope with these feelings. The comfort they once relied on is now out of reach. The elements that used to provide them with a sense of security now leave them with a profound emptiness. They believed they could manage without you, that the distance would be bearable. However, the comfort of familiarity can be quite deceptive. When something has been an integral part of your life, it becomes woven into the fabric of your identity. Thus, when that element is suddenly absent, it creates more than just a void. It leads to a fragmented sense of self. They may think they can fill this emptiness with distractions, perhaps a new project, a different person, or exploring new places. Yet, nothing truly compares. Nothing can occupy the space you once held in their life. The more they attempt to substitute you, the more they come to understand just how irreplaceable you truly were. This realization is painful, it cuts deeper than any breakup or disagreement. It is a harsh truth that becomes increasingly difficult to bear with each passing day. The very things that once made them feel truly alive now serve as painful reminders that your absence isn't just a matter of physical distance. It's a complete disappearance. It's not merely the loss of your physical presence, but also the absence of the energy, warmth, and meaning you brought into their world. However, this situation becomes increasingly complicated over time. The more they try to ignore the emptiness inside, the more difficult it becomes to avoid confronting it. They can't shake the persistent feeling that something vital is missing, yet they refuse to admit it openly. Instead, they convince themselves that they're okay, that life is better without you. They tell themselves that the silence around them is peaceful, that they've found their own version of tranquility. but the reality is quite different. The silence is slowly destroying them because what was once familiar, something they took for granted, has now transformed into a ghostly presence that haunts them every single day. They feel trapped, unable to escape or outrun it. And you, perhaps unknowingly, have learned a crucial lesson that they still refuse to face, that familiarity isn't the same as love. It's merely comfort. When comfort turns into dependency, that's when everything begins to fall apart. When you decided to leave, it wasn't just a physical departure, you also stepped away from a version of yourself that felt compelled to constantly meet their needs and expectations. You distanced yourself from a dynamic that no longer served your growth. In doing so, you discovered your own stability and a stronger sense of identity. You no longer feel the need to play the role they once expected of you, freeing yourself to become your authentic self. You don't need their approval to know your own value. You're no longer holding your breath, hoping they'll finally see what you're truly worth. So, let them sit with that hollow feeling. Let them scramble to patch up the void. Let them stare into the mirror and confront what's staring back. Here's the reality, no matter how hard they try, they'll never recover the real you, the you who poured out everything, who gave until there was nothing left to give. That version of you is gone, and the emptiness you left behind? It's permanent. That's the painful truth they'll have to live with. If this resonates, if you've ever been the one who walked away and watched them struggle, futilely, to replace what they lost, then say it with me in the comments. Nothing can fill what's gone. Say it boldly. Say it unapologetically. Let the world see that you understand the worth of your presence. And never forget, no amount of effort on their part can recreate what you once offered. Stick around, because we're about to explore what happens over time when they're left alone with nothing but their own thoughts. Here's the thing, their ego used to roar. Now? Regret screams even louder. Ego is just the distraction we cling to so we don't have to face reality. And when you left? They didn't even blink. They folded their arms across their chests and rolled their eyes in disdain. In hushed tones, they muttered phrases like, "He'll return soon enough," or even more cutting remarks such as, "He relies on me far more than I ever depended on him." This behavior was not a sign of true strength, rather, it was the voice of an inflated ego, loud and brash. For a time, this facade seemed effective. It provided them with a false sense of control and allowed them to rest easier at night. However, let me remind you that ego is a delicate construct. It may be boisterous when it feels dominant, but when quietness settles in, when time drags on, and when you do not come back, that ego begins to fracture. Beneath its surface lies something far more profound and burdensome, regret. Initially, they felt a surge of power, convinced that your absence was merely a strategic move in a game they believed they were winning. A bit of silence here, a touch of distance there. They assumed you would eventually come back, seeking closure, validation, and ultimately, needing them. This was the story they convinced themselves of, a comforting tale their egos eagerly embraced. However, there's an important truth to understand: fantasies quietly fall apart, unnoticed at first. Meanwhile, reality lingers in the background, patient yet harsh, waiting for the moment to reveal itself fully. Now that you are no longer present, that imagined version of things is slowly unraveling bit by bit. You're no longer reaching out, communicating, or trying to clarify anything. You have chosen silence, maintaining it steadily. And the more time passes in this stillness, the louder the feeling of regret becomes. It begins softly, like a gentle whisper questioning, "Did I misunderstand him?" This grows into a deeper wonder, "Why hasn't he said a word?" Eventually, it erupts into a storm of doubt and remorse, "What have I done?" What nobody saw coming was your indifference, your decision to walk away without any dramatic displays, without breaking down, without attempting to repair what was broken. This unexpected calmness is what unsettles them most. At first, they misinterpreted your silence, assuming it was just a strategic pause, a fleeting moment of pride, or even a temporary emotional stance. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the truth became undeniable: your silence wasn't a tactic. You weren't lingering in the background, waiting for your cue to return. you had already walked away, leaving the stage behind. Now, the spotlight shines solely on them, illuminating an emptiness they didn't anticipate. The weight of regret doesn't crash down all at once. Instead, it arrives gradually, like waves lapping at the shore, persistent and impossible to ignore. It surfaces in those hushed, solitary moments, late at night when the distractions fade, when friends depart, and they're left alone with their thoughts. That's when their ego, usually so well armored, feels exposed. That's when the memories seep in, not just memories of you, but of their own actions. The careless words they spoke, the distance they created, the times you extended an olive branch only for them to dismiss it as insignificant. They didn't lose someone who pleaded or clung desperately. They lost someone who had every reason to fight but chose not to, and that difference, that quiet strength, is what lingers in their mind. As for you, perhaps you still question why they seemed so self-assured initially, why they treated your absence as inconsequential, why they never glanced back. Here's the honest truth, their ego clouded their judgment. It handed them a narrative where they believed, I hold all the power here. But reality, as it often does, had other plans. Your silence has often been misinterpreted as a sign of weakness. While your emotional distance may have seemed temporary, it's important to recognize that the ego can be deceptive, whereas time reveals the truth. You have transitioned from being a man who felt the need to prove his value to one who is fully aware of it. When a man understands his own worth, it is those who underestimated him who end up feeling regret, not the other way around. This is where your victory lies. You maintained your composure and did not compromise your inner peace by getting caught up in their turmoil. You remained steadfast amidst the chaos, allowing others to hold on to their beliefs about you. This is the essence of true Stoic strength. There was no need for you to shout or to persuade anyone, you simply allowed time to strip away the layers of their ego, ultimately exposing the underlying feelings of fear, insecurity, and now, regret. Let them bear that weight, it is no longer your responsibility. You have already shouldered enough. You have gone above and beyond, bending over backwards to accommodate others, and you have explained yourself more than enough. In moments of quiet reflection, they come to understand that it wasn't merely your presence that held significance, rather, it was your absence that imparted the most profound lessons. If this resonates with your experience, if you've ever chosen to step away with a sense of tranquility, allowing their ego to crumble on its own, then I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Regret has a way of being more pronounced. Let it resonate and serve as a reminder to the world that your true strength does not stem from how you react in the moment. Instead, it lies in your capacity to walk away without the need for acknowledgement or validation. Stay with me, as we are about to delve into the aspect they dread the most, when your silence transforms into a message that they cannot ignore. Consider this, sometimes, a lack of explanation speaks volumes. Your silence can convey lessons far more impactful than any words you might express. They may have anticipated a detailed explanation, a lengthy message, or a heartfelt speech where you laid everything bare one last time. They were looking for closure on their own terms, as they have always expected you to shoulder the emotional burden. They wanted you to guide them through the aftermath of their actions, helping them grasp the consequences of their choices while you silently bore your own heartache. However, this time, there was no speech, no emotional breakdown, and no extensive recap of how everything unraveled. You departed without making a sound. You moved away with a sense of tranquility. In that instant, regardless of their understanding, your quietness conveyed a powerful message. There was no response, no words exchanged, and not a single attempt to alter the conclusion of the situation. This is what is gnawing at them, as they find themselves at a loss for how to handle it. Individuals like this do not fear expressions of anger, rather, they dread indifference. They are accustomed to dealing with chaos and know how to react to it. They are familiar with slamming doors, sending emotional texts, and engaging in dramatic discussions. However, silence is an entirely different kind of tool. It does not engage in conflict, it simply exits the scene and does not come back. Now, they are left alone in that space, surrounded by a multitude of questions that remain unanswered. What does it signify when you choose to remain silent? Why did you not respond? Wasn't it expected that this would hurt you more? How can you maintain such composure? These inquiries are not merely lingering in their thoughts, they are shouting for attention. With each passing day that goes by without a word from you, they descend further into a state of bewilderment. By choosing silence, you inadvertently force them to confront the very things they've been trying to escape, their actions, their decisions, and the void within themselves. When you withhold a message, they begin crafting their own narratives, and it's in these moments that the truth becomes more piercing than any words you might have shared. Instead of providing closure, you've handed them a mirror, and what they see reflected back is deeply unsettling. They see someone who let go of something genuine, someone who mistook consistency for weakness, and someone who engaged in games with a person who never felt the need to reciprocate. The irony lies in their assumption that you were the one who needed closure more, they were so convinced you couldn't move on. Yet, with every moment of your silence, you prove them wrong. You're not trapped in the past, nor are you frantically searching for answers. You've embraced the reality that not every story gets a neat ending, and this quiet acceptance is what unnerves them most. When you refuse to explain yourself, you strip them of control over the narrative, leaving them to grapple with their own doubts. They begin to question their actions. Was I in the wrong? Did I go too far? Your silence becomes a powerful statement, revealing that you found peace in letting go, while they're left to reckon with the weight of their own choices. Did I underestimate his worth? Absolutely. Without a doubt. The remarkable aspect of your silence is that it refrains from vocalizing these thoughts. Instead, it allows them to gradually, painfully, and naturally come to their own realizations. They sought a comforting explanation to ease their wounded pride, but what they received was a void that only deepened their hurt. Perhaps you still feel a lingering connection. A part of you might be tempted to send one last message to clarify your stance, to justify your actions, or to make everything clearer. However, you are not obligated to do so. Your actions have already conveyed everything necessary. Your silence is not a sign of pettiness or passivity, it is deliberate and meaningful. It communicates, I have already expressed enough. I have given all that I could. Now, I choose to prioritize my own peace of mind. And that peace is something they will always remember. You have transformed into the unanswered question, the enigma that remains unresolved. In a world where people crave neat, packaged endings, like wrapping up emotions in a tidy bow, you become the exception to that rule. If you've ever found yourself in a situation where your silence spoke louder than any words ever could, then this is for you. Take a moment right now and type those unspoken truths into the comments. Because sometimes, the most powerful message isn't delivered through speech but through stillness. Own that silence with pride. Let it resonate, like a drumbeat echoing through a canyon. Let it serve as a reminder that farewells don't always need grand speeches or dramatic scenes. In fact, the quietest exits, the ones where you turn away without a word, can leave the deepest imprints on someone's heart. Stick around, because we're about to dive into what unfolds when your absence becomes a daily reckoning, and how that quiet void begins to unravel everything they once thought they knew. Here's the thing, every single day you're not there is a new chapter in their story of realization. Some people never truly grasp what they had because they assumed it would always be a constant in their lives. The truth doesn't crash down like a thunderstorm, it sneaks in slowly, like shadows stretching at dusk. It arrives piece by piece, slipping into the quiet moments where your presence used to linger, like an empty chair at the table, a paused playlist, or the way their voice wavers mid-sentence when your name isn't there to fill the air. At first, they might convince themselves they're fine, even liberated. They might smile a little too brightly when you don't reply to their message, or post something overly cheerful online just to prove how unbothered they are. But time has a way of turning days into nights, nights into hushed conversations, and hushed conversations into quiet introspection. That smug grin they wore like armor? It's starting to crack. Because with every passing day without you, a new truth surfaces, a truth they weren't ready for, a discomfort they didn't anticipate, and a quiet ache that grows stronger with each sunrise they face alone. It's fascinating how others underestimated your resolve. They anticipated you'd be the first to crack, constantly checking your phone for a distraction, rehashing fond memories as a pretext to re-establish contact. Instead, your tranquility, steadfastness, and deliberate choice not to engage have left them perplexed and increasingly unsettled. The true source of their discomfort isn't the separation itself, but your serene acceptance of it. This shift has profoundly impacted their daily life. Not because the world around them has changed, but because your absence has altered their experience of it. Everyday routines they once shared with you now feel like hollow, solitary exercises. The flavor of their morning coffee seems dulled, their commute to work lacks warmth, and even the music that once played without a second thought now serves as a poignant reminder. Each song has become a potential emotional trigger, with your memory subtly intertwined in every verse. This is the profound effect of time. It doesn't merely tick by, it intensifies emotions. Rather than erasing the past, it magnifies the authenticity of what's been lost, highlighting the stark contrast between the genuine connection you shared and the superficiality that may have followed. With each passing day, your absence serves as a poignant reminder, drawing them deeper into the realization of what they've truly lost. Perhaps it's not merely that they've lost a person. It might be that they've released something truly irreplaceable, a connection that can't be replicated. They won't admit this openly, naturally. Pride keeps their confession locked away. But that quietness isn't resilience anymore, it's become a battle. Their silence now acts like a fragile disguise, barely containing the emotional weight they're starting to acknowledge. Outwardly, they might appear composed and unaffected. Yet when darkness falls and solitude arrives, reality surfaces. You weren't just another individual, you represented safety and belonging, like a cherished home. Now they're directionless, unable to retrace their steps to that security. It's strangely revealing how people often recognize the value of tranquility only after chaos has passed. You served as their anchor, their stabilizing force, but they never grasped your importance until they chose to drift away. Now they're adrift in a vast emotional sea without guidance, without bearings, without your presence. The currents feel more chilling, and every swell seems more burdensome than before. Imagine someone floating without a life raft, that's how they navigate their emotions now, realizing too late what kept them steady. The void you left behind no longer carries the quiet peace it once had. Now, it resonates powerfully, as each reverberation reinforces the inescapable truth: your return is not forthcoming. They miscalculated your strength, interpreting your silence as tentative delay and your steady composure as bewilderment. In reality, you weren't pausing out of indecision, you were in the process of healing, taking definitive steps forward. You weren't mired in confusion, you had brought a chapter to a close. Now, every sunrise that unfolds without your message and each evening that passes without your presence is gradually remolding the narrative they clung to, the tale where you supposedly depended on them, where you would rush back out of weakness. But true weakness is never marked by a silent departure or by seeking validation through quietude. True frailty does not evolve in a calm, self-restorative manner while someone else is caught in a maelstrom of clamor. This isn't a sign of weakness at all, it is a manifestation of evolution. You are not simply enduring this phase, you are actively transforming it into growth. You are evolving through this experience. While others attempt to fill their emptiness with distractions, you are enriching your life with purpose and significance. As they chase fleeting pleasures to escape their reality, you are constructing a solid foundation that they will never be able to attain again. This is what sets you apart. This is the reason why each day without your presence becomes an increasingly burdensome weight for them to bear, while it becomes easier for you to release. If this is your time to shine, and you have felt yourself rising a little more each day in quiet strength while they gradually unravel in their own struggles, then I encourage you to express it in the comments right now. Every day I rise. Let this be a powerful affirmation. Let it serve as a reminder, not only to them but also to yourself. You are not trapped in the past. You are not stuck in a moment that has long since passed. You are progressing forward while they remain ensnared in the shadows of their losses. Stay with me, as we will soon delve deeper into the turmoil that their minds create when they come to the realization that they cannot comprehend you, and how this enigma becomes the very source of their sleepless nights. The uncertainty is driving them to the brink of madness. Mystery fuels desire and silence. It is this silence that ignites the flame of longing. They thought they had you all figured out, every emotion, every action, every response. They were convinced they had memorized your entire blueprint. You were the one who could always be counted on, the reliable figure in their life, the steady and reassuring presence they could depend on, push away, and then draw back in whenever it suited their needs. They believed you would eventually react, that the weight of the silence would cause you to falter, and that you would ultimately reach out just to alleviate the uncertainty. Yet, here you are, remaining silent, composed, and distant. Now, the uncertainty is gradually consuming them from the inside out. You see, individuals like that don't merely desire control, they rely on it for their sense of stability. It's not truly about love, it's more about having the upper hand. It's not about forming a genuine connection, it's about the comfort of knowing they still possess a part of you, even after they have chosen to push you away. They seek updates, signs of your feelings, and any reactions from you. When you provide none of these, their thoughts become a cage they never anticipated entering. It begins innocently enough, with a fleeting thought, I wonder what he's up to right now. But that thought doesn't simply vanish, it evolves. It develops a life of its own. Questions start to swirl in their mind, has he moved on? Is he thinking about me? Why hasn't he reached out? Who is he spending time with? How is he managing to be so at ease? They grab their device, swipe through your old messages, maybe linger over your name, but you're quiet. No comment, no text, no trace, just a ghost in the digital ether. You faded into the background, leaving them lost. This isn't just baffling, it's deeply frustrating. In a culture where people flood the internet with their struggles for validation and flaunt their recovery for praise, you do the opposite. You vanish. You embrace secrecy instead of drama, calmness over performative flair. That's not just bewildering, it's unbearable. Because truthfully, people cling to what they can't name. Now that they can't define you, they can't erase you. You're not offering closure, you're not hinting at anything. You're just leaving a void. And in that emptiness, their minds begin to paint vivid, unspoken narratives. They build tales from silence, imagining scenarios they can't undo. The worst part? They don't know how much of it is real. Maybe you've moved on. Maybe you've become the kind of person they never thought possible. Maybe you're with someone who truly sees you. It's a paradox, your absence becomes the most defining moment of all. Perhaps, and this realization cuts deepest, you were never essential to them in the first place. That single idea alone becomes insomnia fuel, haunting their nights. Silence doesn't merely build walls, it cultivates ambiguity. For those with delicate self-worth, living in that fog of not knowing feels like walking through quicksand. When your patterns were predictable, they held the reins, basking in perceived authority. But now? Without access to your reactions, without control over your narrative, and without clarity about your stance, their sense of power evaporates. The mirage of dominance they clung to dissolves. Suddenly, the person they believed orbited their world becomes an enigma they can't unravel, a puzzle occupying their thoughts relentlessly. You might still wonder, do they notice my absence? Does my quiet stir their curiosity? Let me ease that uncertainty. They're hyper-aware. Every unanswered message ticks like a clock in their mind. Every day you thrive independently chips away at their certainty. Your strength grows in their imagination, not because you've mastered manipulation, but because you've abandoned their game entirely. This unscripted shift blindsides them. The quiet observer becomes the unexpected teacher, proving that silence isn't a strategic ploy, it's rebirth. Where they anticipated predictable reactions, they now face a metamorphosis. The caterpillar of compliance has become the butterfly of self-possession, and their rulebook holds no instructions for this. That change within you has now become the enigma that lingers in every space you enter alone. Allow them to be curious. Let their thoughts wander and their minds race with possibilities. Let their imagination fill in the blanks. You are no longer responsible for giving them comfort or closure. Your priority now is to safeguard your own well-being. In choosing this path, you have evolved into something uncommon, a person who doesn't seek the spotlight to validate his value. You are someone who no longer chases after approval or reassurance. Instead, you let your absence make a statement all on its own. If you find yourself relating to this, if your quiet presence has turned you into the unanswered question in someone else's mind, share your experience in the comments below. Embrace this with confidence and pride. Remember, your silence is not a void, it is filled with resilience and inner power. To sum up, silence should never be mistaken for weakness. In fact, it can be your most powerful asset. While others may become unsettled by uncertainty, you remain composed and steady. There is no need to justify your value to anyone, you demonstrate it through your actions and the way you live each day. If this message resonated with you, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe for more insightful content, and consider sharing it with someone who might benefit from this reminder today.